You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin. The moment I saw Tyler's face twist in rage, I knew something was about to explode. He was standing in the kitchen, fists clenched, his eyes filled with a fury I hadn't seen in him before. His voice was low but sharp as he jabbed a finger toward me. "You're not my father," he spat, his words cutting through the air like a knife. "You never have been. You've been lying to me my entire life." I froze, a sick feeling starting to coil in my stomach. I glanced at Emily, my wife, who was standing off to the side, her arms crossed, her lips curling into a small, smug smile. She had this look, like she was enjoying the chaos, as though watching me fall apart was some kind of sick game. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream at her, ask her why she hadn't told me sooner, why she'd let me live a lie for 17 years. But instead, I turned to Tyler, my heart pounding in my chest, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" Tyler's eyes were wild, a mix of anger and disbelief. "The DNA test, Dad, the one you had done. It's not me. I'm not yours. I never was." His voice cracked, and I saw the raw pain in his eyes, the same pain that mirrored my own. I staggered back, feeling the weight of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. The DNA test. I'd had it done a couple of weeks ago, the one Emily had insisted on, saying it was just a formality. She'd said Tyler needed to know for his future, that it was better to get it out of the way. I'd agreed, trusting her, trusting that she had my best interest at heart. But now, hearing Tyler's words, seeing the truth in his eyes, I felt like my entire world had come crashing down. I looked at Emily, and for the first time in years, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. The coldness in her eyes, the indifference. She didn't care about what was happening. She didn't care about me. "Tyler's right, Jake," Emily said, her voice cool, almost casual. "I knew. I've known for years. And it wasn't just some innocent mistake. I slept with someone else. Brandon." The name hit me like another slap and I recoiled, my heart pounding in my ears. "I wasn't happy with you, Jake. I haven't been for a long time. And you're just easier to manipulate." I couldn't think straight. My mind was spinning, my chest tight. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, to make her feel the weight of the betrayal that had just shattered everything I thought I knew. But instead, I stood there, feeling numb. Tyler wasn't my son, and Emily had known this entire time. "So what? You've been lying to me all this time?" My voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Emily's smile faltered just slightly, but it was there, that smug, satisfied look. "You were always a good provider, Jake, and that's all I needed from you. You're a good man, but you're not the father. I'm sorry." "Sorry?" I couldn't even find the words to respond. The anger, the pain, the betrayal, it all welled up inside me, leaving me speechless. My hands shook, my stomach turned, and my chest felt like it was going to explode. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. "Why?" I asked, finally choking out the word. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me before?" Emily shrugged, her eyes flicking away as if the question wasn't worth answering. "It wasn't important. You were a good father to Tyler, and he didn't need to know. You don't need to know either. It's in the past now." "Past?" I repeated, my voice rising. "How is this in the past? How is this something I'm supposed to just forget? I was your husband, Emily. I loved you. I loved him." I pointed at Tyler, who was still standing there, looking lost. "And you didn't care enough to tell me the truth." Tyler's face softened for a moment, but the anger returned just as quickly. "It's not about you, Jake. It's about me. I've been living this lie for 17 years, and now I have to figure out who I really am." His words stung, and I realized too late that he was right. I wasn't just hurting because of what Emily had done. I was hurting because of what I had allowed myself to believe for so long. I'd been living a lie, too, and the truth was more painful than anything I could have imagined. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, trying to push past the shock. "I can't do this," I said, my voice cold, the resolve beginning to form inside me. "I can't do this anymore. I don't even know who you are anymore, Emily, and I don't know who I am in all of this. I can't stay here. I need to get out." Emily raised an eyebrow, as if this was just another one of my tantrums, and shrugged. "If that's what you want, then go. It doesn't change anything. You're still going to be stuck with the mess I've made." I couldn't believe it. After everything, she was still so cold, so indifferent. It was like I meant nothing to her. But this wasn't just about Emily anymore. This was about me, about taking back control of my life, my identity. I turned away from her and looked at Tyler, who stood there, silent. You want to find your real father, Tyler? Go ahead, because I'm done. I'm done being the one who picks up the pieces for everyone else. I'm out. Without another word, I walked out the door, the weight of the world on my shoulders and my heart burning with the realization that everything I had built, everything I had trusted, had been a lie. The first thing I did after leaving Emily and Tyler behind was find Doug. He was the kind of lawyer who didn't ask questions unless he absolutely had to. I needed someone who could help me bring everything crashing down, and Doug was exactly the kind of person who wouldn't bat an eye at my plan. His office smelled of old books and polished wood, a place where people came to seek legal advice, not vengeance. Doug didn't stand when I walked in. He simply motioned to the chair across from his desk. "Jake," he said, his voice measured, calm. "What can I do for you?" I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I slid a folder across the desk. I want out of my marriage, full legal disassociation from Emily. I want it all. Divorce, financial separation, custody if it comes to that. I want nothing left to tie me to her. Doug glanced down at the folder, but didn't open it. He wasn't surprised. He'd known me for years, and he knew something was coming. He was a shrewd man. "You've got a plan, I assume?" I nodded. The weight of everything I was about to do felt heavy, but it also felt right. "I'm not just cutting ties. I'm going after her. I want her exposed. All the lies, everything she's done. I want her world to burn." Doug raised an eyebrow, his fingers tapping on the edge of the desk. "And you think revenge is going to make you feel better about this? About her?" I leaned forward, the fire in my chest still burning hot. "I'm done being the fool, Doug. She's destroyed my life, lied to me for 17 years. I don't give a damn about getting closure. I just want to watch her lose everything." Doug studied me for a moment, like he was weighing whether to talk me out of it or to just let me go ahead. He picked up the folder, flipping through the documents inside. "You've got everything. Her affair, the finances, the DNA test results. You're sure you want to do this?" I wasn't sure of anything, but one thing was clear. Emily had taken everything from me. She'd made me a joke in my own life, and it was time I got my power back. "I'm done being the nice guy, Doug. Let's go after her. I want her exposed. I want Brandon exposed." "Brandon?" Doug muttered, flipping through the papers again. "You want me to find out everything about him too? I want his life torn apart. If he's involved in her mess, I want to make sure he's left with nothing. I want him out of the picture, completely." Doug sighed, leaning back in his chair, his hands steepled in front of him. "All right, Jake. You're sure? Because once we start this, there's no turning back. You'll never be able to take the pieces of this back." I could feel the anger boiling in my veins, the need for action, for control. I don't want to take anything back. I want everything she's built to crumble. I want her to know what it feels like to be helpless. Doug nodded, his eyes narrowing with interest. "All right, I'll start pulling the strings, but you need to be prepared for everything that's coming. This won't be easy, not for either of you." I stood up, the weight of the decision settling in. "I'm not afraid anymore. Do it." I left Doug's office feeling a strange sense of satisfaction, but that didn't last long. The drive to my next destination, my car rattling along the cracked pavement, gave me time to think. I had been living under a lie for years, a lie I allowed to happen because I was too trusting, too naive. I stopped at a quiet park and turned off the engine. The wind was sharp against my skin, and the empty swing swayed gently in the breeze. I sat there for a while, my mind racing through all the ways I could make Emily feel the weight of her betrayal. But there was no time to sit and brood. My emotions were a fire that needed to burn itself out, and I knew the only way to do that was to move forward. I wasn't going to cry over her. I wasn't going to beg for answers. She didn't deserve any of my tears. I wasn't the one who had lied to the people who loved her. As the hours passed, I stayed in the car, thinking. My phone buzzed with texts from Emily. I ignored them. I didn't care about her excuses anymore. After some time, I started making a few calls, pulling strings of my own. Doug had promised to dig into Brandon's life, but I had other ways of getting things done. I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with before I moved on to the next phase. I wasn't going to let them escape this. They had made a fool of me, and I was going to make sure the world saw them for who they really were. By the time the sun started to set, I felt the resolve settle in. Emily wouldn't get away with this. I wasn't going to give her the chance to rewrite the story. This was my revenge, and it was just beginning. I hadn't expected to feel the sharp sting of betrayal again, but it came in the most unexpected way. After leaving Emily and Tyler behind, after I'd started formulating my plan, I still wasn't prepared for what my own mother would reveal. I pulled up to her house just before dinner, my hands tight on the steering wheel. I hadn't been able to speak to her since everything had unraveled. Part of me knew I should have stayed away, but I needed to hear the truth. If anyone could tell me why Emily had done what she did, it would be my mother, and I had to know if she was complicit. When I walked through the door, the familiar smell of her cooking filled the air, but there was an odd tension in the room. My mom was sitting at the kitchen table, stirring a pot of soup. Her eyes were on the stove, but I could tell she was waiting for me. "Jake," she said, without turning around. "I'm glad you came. I was worried you might be avoiding me." I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. Every moment felt laced with lies. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low. "About Emily, about everything." She paused, still not looking at me. The silence between us grew thick, and then, in the softest voice, she spoke. "I know you're angry, and I know you want to hurt her. But you don't know everything, Jake. You don't understand what she went through." That familiar pit of frustration opened in my stomach. "I know everything I need to know, Mom. She's been lying to me for years. She had an affair with Brandon. She's been hiding the truth, and you knew." My mother's hand trembled slightly as she set the spoon down. She turned slowly, her eyes meeting mine, but they weren't filled with the same warmth I used to rely on. They were filled with something else, a defensive coldness. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "Then why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "Why did you keep lying to me? You were supposed to be my mother. You were supposed to protect me." My mother sighed heavily, almost as if she were physically burdened by the weight of her own decisions. "I did it for you, Jake. For the family. Emily told me you were dying." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "She said you were sick, that you didn't have long left, and she was scared. She said she needed someone to take care of her and Tyler." I stared at her, stunned. "What are you talking about? I wasn't dying. I'm still not dying. You believe that?" She nodded, avoiding my gaze. "I didn't want to believe it either, but when Emily said you were—" She faltered, her voice trailing off. "You believed her? Just like that? You thought that just because she said I was sick, it gave her permission to betray me?" I could feel the fury building in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You helped justify her affair with Brandon because you thought I was going to die?" Her lips trembled. "I didn't want to see you hurt, but Emily was right about one thing. You weren't giving her the attention she needed. She needed someone else." "I needed her," I snapped. "And this is how she repaid me. She took everything, my trust, my love, and now she's taken my son too. How could you help her do this to me?" "I didn't help her," my mother said quickly, her face softening. I just thought she needed support. I thought she was doing what was best for Tyler." My heart shattered. "So, you think she did what was best for Tyler by lying to me and destroying our family? You think that's okay?" My mother's face contorted with confusion. "Jake, she told me you weren't well, and I believed it. I thought it was all for the best." I stood there, stunned. The silence that followed felt suffocating. I had trusted her, believed she was on my side, and now I saw it for what it was. She was complicit. She had helped Emily justify her actions by lying about my health, all for the sake of keeping up the illusion, for keeping the family together in a way that was never really real. My hands clenched into fists. "You were supposed to protect me, Mom, but you didn't. You've been protecting her all along, and you're just as guilty as she is." The finality of my words hung in the air, and for a moment I saw a flicker of regret in my mother's eyes. But it was too little, too late. I turned away, the anger in me hardening like a stone. "I can't do this anymore, Mom. You're just as much a part of this as Emily is. I'm done." I didn't wait for her to reply. I couldn't. Everything I had built my life on had been built on lies. Lies from the woman I loved. Lies from the woman who was supposed to protect me. I walked out of the house, my heart colder than it had ever been. As I stepped into the car, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't just done with Emily. I was done with all of them. Every last one of them who had lied to me, betrayed me. They were all going to pay for what they'd done. I was going to make sure of it. The weight of what I was about to do settled heavily on me, but I pushed it aside. It was time to make things happen. I had spent days planning, hours stewing over the betrayal, but now the pieces were finally falling into place. I sat in front of my laptop in a dimly lit hotel room, the screen casting a pale light over my face. Doug had already started the legal work to sever my ties with Emily, but I needed to do more. I needed to break her. I needed to make her feel the same helplessness I felt. I pulled up Brandon's name on my computer, his face flashing in my mind. I could already picture him, smooth, confident, acting like he was untouchable, but I knew better. And I had the power to tear his world down, piece by piece. I ran his name through a few databases, and it didn't take long for the red flags to pop up. Back taxes, a criminal record, a history of financial trouble that he had desperately tried to hide. I dug deeper, making calls to a few sources I trusted. By the time I closed my laptop, I had everything I needed. I smiled, a dark satisfaction coursing through me. It was time for Brandon to lose his cushy life. I made a few calls, discreet, careful, a couple of well-placed people, a couple of strategic emails, and within hours, Brandon's name was plastered across the financial media for all the wrong reasons. Tax evasion, fraud, the whole 9 yards. I couldn't help but feel a cold thrill as I watched his life begin to unravel. His employer was quick to respond, dismissing him with an air of professionalism that masked the reality. Brandon was done. The world would know him for what he truly was. Next, I moved on to Emily's finances. She didn't know it yet, but her safety net was about to be yanked out from under her. I froze our joint account, locking her out of everything. She would have just enough for a plane ticket, no more, no comfort, no cushion. I could almost picture her reaction when she realized what had happened. The panic would hit first, then the scramble, the frantic phone calls. I wasn't going to give her any room to breathe, not now, not after everything she'd done. I spent the night in the car, the engine off, parked under a quiet street lamp. The hotel room was too stuffy, too real. I wanted to be out in the open, away from the noise, reflecting on everything. I had been a fool for so long, but not anymore. The darkness outside matched the emptiness I felt inside. I watched the headlights of passing cars blur in the distance, just like the life I had left behind. I could hear Emily's voice in my mind, the smug tone as she dismissed everything. The betrayal I had been living in, the years of lies. It was all there, in the dark, and I was done. Done being the nice guy, done being the fool. Tomorrow, the next phase of my plan would begin. I wasn't just going to expose Emily and Brandon for what they were. I was going to destroy them, piece by piece. But I wouldn't stop there. I still had one final card to play. Emily's girls' retreat. It was supposed to be her escape, her little getaway. But when she stepped off that plane in Miami, divorce papers would be waiting for her, and she wouldn't see it coming. I leaned back against the seat, the weight of my decision settling in. There was no going back now, no more second guessing. I was done being the victim. Tomorrow, Emily's life would begin to crumble, and I would be there to watch every moment of it. The web I'd spun around Emily was beginning to tighten, and there was something deeply satisfying about watching it unravel. The first threads to snap had been Brandon's, and now it was Emily's turn. I'd carefully gathered everything I could about Brandon's life, and the pieces were falling into place faster than I'd anticipated. His financial issues were public, his back taxes a mess, and there was no hiding the criminal record I'd uncovered. But the real kicker was the young woman I'd found in his life, a lover who was far younger than Emily and far less discreet than Brandon thought. I snapped a photo of them together, a careless moment on Brandon's part, and sent it straight to Emily. No context, no words, just the damning evidence. She wouldn't expect it, not yet. Not until it was too late. As expected, Emily's world began to crumble just hours after the photo landed in her inbox. She spent the next few days trying to track down Brandon, but I wasn't done yet. I needed more than just the affair. I needed to destroy everything. In the meantime, Tyler came home, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He barely said a word as he walked through the front door. His eyes red, his body slumped with the heaviness of everything that had unfolded. I saw it in him. His whole world had been turned upside down, just like mine. But unlike me, Tyler still had faith. He hadn't yet seen the full depth of the lies. Emily was on the couch, her eyes swollen from crying. The drama she'd orchestrated now weighed heavily on her, but I could see she wasn't quite ready to admit what she'd done. She hadn't yet come to terms with the destruction she'd left in her wake. "Mom?" Tyler's voice was quiet, hoarse. "What's going on?" I watched them both from the hallway. Tyler didn't know yet, but he was about to. Emily lifted her eyes, meeting his gaze, and all I saw was guilt. Not the remorse I wanted to see, but the kind of guilt that comes from getting caught, from realizing the mess she'd created and couldn't escape. "I've been talking to your dad about everything," she murmured, her voice wavering. "We just need time to figure things out, okay?" Tyler took a step back, shaking his head, disbelief etched across his face. "This isn't just about you two, is it? Everything's falling apart. The paternity test. Brandon, he's not just a friend, is he?" The dam broke. Emily's tears spilled over, but I saw nothing but manipulation in them. Her entire world, the one she'd built on lies, was crumbling. Tyler, who had always trusted her, was finally seeing her for who she really was. I took a step forward, my voice calm but cutting through the tension. "Tyler, this isn't just about Brandon. It's about your mother and the lies she's been feeding you for years. She's not the person you think she is. She's been hiding things from all of us." Tyler's head snapped toward me, his eyes full of confusion and hurt. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" I didn't hold back. "I'm talking about how Emily has been lying to you, how she's been lying to both of us all these years. She had an affair with Brandon, Tyler. She's been hiding it from you." The words hung in the air between us, thick with betrayal. Tyler blinked, his eyes narrowing, trying to piece it all together. "This isn't true. You're lying too. This isn't real." I stood firm, the evidence of Brandon's infidelity and Emily's manipulation already on display. "You can keep denying it, but the truth is right in front of you. She lied. She's been lying. And now everything's falling apart." Tyler's face twisted with disbelief, but I saw the crack in his armor. The pain he'd been hiding from all of this started to seep through. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" "Because I didn't want to hurt you," I said, my voice cracking slightly, though I refused to let it show. "But you needed to know the truth. You deserved to know the truth." The room fell silent for a moment. Emily, unable to control herself, let out a sob, but Tyler's gaze was fixed on the ground, his face pale, his fists clenched at his sides. "I'm sorry," I added quietly, "but the truth was always going to come out. It's just a matter of when." Tyler's shoulders shook slightly and he turned away, unable to meet my eyes. His pain was palpable, and for a moment I regretted the harshness of my words. But then I reminded myself, this was not just about me. This was about him too. He had the right to know, but Emily's tears were getting louder, her sobs filling the room, and I knew that Tyler needed space to process what had just been dropped on him. I wasn't going to be the one to comfort her, not after everything she'd done. "I'm going to make sure you have everything you need, Tyler," I said, my voice steady, though my emotions were raw. "But I can't stand here and pretend like nothing's wrong. This is your mom's mess, and she's going to have to figure it out herself." Tyler didn't respond, retreating into himself, his back to both of us as he sank onto the couch. The world had shifted beneath him, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. As I walked out, the sound of Emily's cries still echoed in my mind, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her anymore. The truth had come, and there was no escaping it. No more lies. Tyler's graduation party was supposed to be a celebration, a moment of pride, of joy, a new beginning for him. But instead, it became the moment I chose to rip the curtain down on the lies that had held my family together for years. The venue was bright, decorated with the kind of elegance that felt so out of place for us. Emily was standing at the front, her voice carrying through the room as she gave a speech about Tyler's accomplishments. She looked radiant, proud, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I hated the sight of her. The smile on her face, the way she held herself. It was all a mask. She thought she had it all under control, but she couldn't hide from the truth any longer. I'd been standing at the back of the room, leaning against the doorframe, watching her. She didn't notice me at first, caught up in her speech, her hands animated as she spoke of the future. But I wasn't there to hear her empty praise. I walked forward, every step deliberate, every movement filled with the weight of everything I'd been holding back. The air in the room grew heavier with every second. But I didn't care. I had made up my mind. "Excuse me, Emily," I said, interrupting her mid-sentence. The room fell silent. Her eyes locked with mine, and I could see the flicker of recognition, the panic, the realization that this wasn't going to be a quiet evening anymore. "Jake, what are you doing?" she stammered, but the words couldn't hide the unease in her voice. "I need to say something," I replied, my voice steady and clear. "Tyler, come here." Tyler, standing near the bar, looked at me confused. He was a picture of youthful excitement one moment, but in the next, his expression shifted to one of apprehension. Slowly, he walked over to where I stood, still not fully grasping what was happening. "Jake, what's going on?" Emily's voice was strained, her eyes flicking between Tyler and me. She knew deep down that this wasn't going to end well. "I'm sorry, Tyler," I said, my voice calm, but my heart pounding. "I should have told you this earlier, but I wasn't ready. The truth is, you're not my son." The words hung in the air, and I watched Tyler's face drop, a mix of confusion and disbelief crossing his features. His eyes darted to Emily, searching for answers, but she wouldn't look at him. She just stood there, motionless. "You're not my son," I repeated, my words heavy with the weight of years of deception. "I did a DNA test, Tyler. You're not mine. I'm not your father." The room was still. I could feel the eyes of the guests on us, the uncomfortable whispers already beginning. I could see the shock in Tyler's face as he struggled to process what I had just said. "Dad, no." Tyler's voice trembled, and I saw the hurt in his eyes, the betrayal. "That's not true. It can't be true. I didn't want to break his world like this, but I couldn't keep lying. Not anymore." "I'm sorry, son," I said, my voice cracking, but I couldn't let myself soften now. "But it's true, and you deserve to know. I've been living a lie, too, and I can't do that anymore." Tyler looked at Emily, his face pale, his expression shattered. "Mom, what is he talking about?" His voice was pleading, desperate for answers. Emily finally spoke, her voice cold and distant. "Tyler, it's not what you think. I didn't want you to find out like this, but yes, it's true. Your father is not your father. Brandon is." The room seemed to close in on me as the shock of Emily's words settled in. The truth was out, finally. Tyler had been living a lie, and so had I. And in that moment, I saw Tyler's whole world collapse, just as mine had. "I'm sorry, Tyler," Emily said, her voice distant. She seemed more worried about herself than about him. "I did what I had to do. I didn't want to hurt you, but I had to." Tyler looked at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. "How could you do this to me? How could you keep this from me?" I could see the pain in Tyler's eyes, the way the reality of his life shifted before him. I could hear the tremor in his voice as he turned to leave. "I need to be alone," he whispered before storming off. The room erupted into murmurs, but I didn't pay attention to the guests. My eyes were locked on Emily, her smug facade cracking for the first time. She stood there, looking defeated, her eyes filled with something I couldn't place. "Jake, please," Emily started, but I cut her off. "No," I said firmly. "No more lies. No more games. I'm done. You've destroyed this family, and now you're going to deal with the consequences." Emily didn't say anything more. She knew, just like I did, that everything had changed. The perfect image she had spent years building had crumbled in front of her. The lie was no longer sustainable, but I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. I wasn't done exposing her. Not by a long shot. Tyler was gone. But I had done what I came to do. The world knew the truth now, and the first domino had fallen. The web was unraveling, and there was no way to stop it. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent, breaking the silence in my apartment. I stood from the couch and made my way to the door, expecting yet another unsolicited call or knock from some solicitor. But when I opened it, there stood Tyler, his face drawn tight with frustration and hurt. He didn't look like the teenager I had once known, the one who would laugh at dumb jokes or sit with me on the porch for hours, talking about nothing and everything. The boy I thought of as mine was now a young man who had been shattered by truths I had forced him to face. "What's going on, Jake?" Tyler's voice was low, but it was edged with something dangerous, like a storm that had been quietly brewing, just waiting for the right moment to explode. "I need to know what you did. Why didn't you tell me before?" I stood there for a second, staring at him. The pain in his eyes felt like a mirror to my own, but I couldn't allow myself to soften. Not anymore. I did what I had to do, Tyler, I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't let you live a lie any longer. You deserve the truth. Why did you wait until now? After everything? I don't even know what to think anymore. His fists were clenched at his sides, and the raw emotion in his eyes was almost more than I could bear. He was hurt, angry, confused, and I had done this to him. I didn't want to hurt you, I said again, my voice breaking slightly despite my attempts to keep it firm. But it wasn't just about me. It was about you too, about your whole life being built on something that wasn't true. You deserved to know the truth, even if it hurt. Tyler took a step forward, his eyes scanning my face for something, some trace of an answer he could hold on to. But you could have told me gently. You could have helped me make sense of it. Tyler, how could I tell you that and make it easy? How could I make sense of it when I didn't even understand it myself? I stepped back, trying to keep the space between us. I couldn't protect you from that. I didn't want to be the one to break you, but I needed you to see what's real. You deserve to know who you really are. He exhaled slowly, his expression crumbling. So that's it? Everything's just ruined now? Nothing's ruined. Everything's just been exposed for what it was, I said, my tone hardening again. The truth is a hell of a thing, but it's better than living in the dark, pretending everything's fine. Don't you think? Tyler shook his head, his voice trembling with emotion. I don't know. I don't know how to process this. How am I supposed to deal with this? By facing it, Tyler. You can't hide from it forever. I took a deep breath, holding back the rage that surged through me. It's not going to be easy, but I'm not going to apologize for telling you the truth. You needed to know. He stepped back, the weight of my words sinking in. I could see his mind racing, processing the pain of everything he'd learned. But still, he didn't walk away. He didn't storm out. He just stood there, trying to make sense of it all. You've got the right to be angry, I continued, the words feeling more natural now, the bitterness sharper. But you've also got the right to know who you are, what you come from. Tyler was quiet for a long time, his shoulders slumping. Then he spoke again, his voice quiet and distant. I need to see it. The evidence. Everything you have. I need to understand everything. I paused, considering for a moment. This wasn't going to fix anything, but it was part of the deal. If he wanted the truth, I wasn't going to hold back anymore. I went over to my desk, pulled out the USB drive, and handed it to him without a word. It's all there, Tyler. The test results, everything. It's not easy to swallow, but it's yours now. I just hope you can handle it. He took the drive from me slowly, his fingers trembling slightly. I don't even know if I can, but I have to know. You're strong, Tyler, I said, watching him. But you need to realize something. The truth doesn't change what you're capable of. It just gives you a chance to figure out who you really are. He nodded, his eyes still distant. I'll go through it. I have to. You're not alone in this, I said, though I knew it sounded hollow now. But I'm not the one who can fix it. You've got to do that yourself. Tyler didn't respond immediately. He just turned, walking to the door, his hands clutching the USB like it was his lifeline. But I knew better than anyone. He wasn't looking for answers from me anymore. The boy I'd raised was gone, replaced by a man who had to figure out his own truth. Before he left, he turned back to face me one last time, his voice quiet but full of emotion. I don't know what comes next, but thank you for being honest. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I simply nodded. Tyler left without another word, the door clicking shut behind him. And as I stood there, alone again, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. But the truth had been set free, and that was all I could give him. The damage was done. The pain would last, and there was no going back. I'd made sure everything was in place, the chessboard set. Now it was time to play the final move. Howard Keene was the last piece in this puzzle, the last target. Emily's accomplice, the man who had helped her hide her financial schemes, was about to feel the weight of his own deception. Howard had always played it cool, acting like he was untouchable. His position in Emily's life gave him that false sense of security. But he didn't know that I'd been watching him, tracking every misstep, every mistake. The man was knee-deep in dirty money, and his connection to Emily's shady dealings was too tight to ignore. I'd already set things in motion. I'd reached out to the right people, digging into his business and uncovering the money laundering scheme he thought he had buried deep. There was no way he could wriggle out of this one. The authorities were already on their way, thanks to some strategic calls and anonymous tips that left nothing to chance. Howard was about to lose everything. I leaned back in my chair, watching the developments unfold. It felt almost too easy, the way everything was falling into place. It was like watching a car wreck in slow motion. You could see it coming, but there was nothing you could do to stop it. I couldn't help but feel a dark satisfaction. Emily had built her entire world on lies, and now it was all coming down. It wasn't just Howard who was going to be dragged down by this. Emily was as guilty as he was. Everything she had worked to keep hidden was being exposed, and it wouldn't be long before the authorities came knocking at her door too. Her reputation, once spotless in the eyes of her friends and family, would be nothing more than dust. I could see it now. Emily's world turning upside down. The foundation she had carefully crafted collapsing like a house of cards. It wasn't just the financial blow she was about to take. It was the public disgrace, the humiliation that came with being exposed. She had spent years hiding behind her carefully curated image, pretending everything was perfect. Now, I was making sure everyone saw the truth. The phone rang. It was Doug. He'd been handling the legal side of things, making sure I had everything in place for the moment when the entire house of cards came tumbling down. "It's done, Jake," he said, his voice calm and professional, just as I expected. "The authorities are on it, Howard's going down, and when they start digging into his finances, Emily won't be far behind. They'll both be in the public eye for all the wrong reasons." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "Good. Let's make sure there's no way out for them." "Not a chance," Doug replied. "Everything is in place. You've got the leverage you need. She won't be able to hide from this." I hung up, feeling a strange calm settle over me. This was the culmination of everything I had worked for, but there was still more to be done. I couldn't help but wonder how Emily was handling it. She was probably starting to feel the heat. Her life was unraveling before her eyes, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel anything for her anymore, except maybe contempt. The next few days were a blur of media reports, public fallout, and the slow, inevitable destruction of Emily's carefully constructed life. Howard Keene was arrested, his ties to the financial crimes laid bare for everyone to see. Emily's reputation was dragged through the mud, the stories about her involvement making headlines, her secrets now public knowledge. I watched it all from a distance, feeling a cold satisfaction. Emily had spent so long pretending, so long living a lie, and now it was all exposed. The life I had once shared with her, the life I had believed in, was nothing more than an illusion. And now she had to face the consequences of everything she had done. But it wasn't just about her anymore. The world was watching, and her once perfect image was shattered. Emily's fall from grace was the final step in my plan. She had destroyed my family, and now it was time for her to pay the price. As the news continued to unfold, I couldn't help but feel like I had reclaimed something I had lost along the way. The truth had finally come to light, and I was watching with a grim satisfaction as everything she had built crumbled. The first part of my revenge was complete, and Emily's life would never be the same again. I sat in the quiet of my apartment, my fingers trembling as I wrote the final letter. I wasn't sure if it was for me or for her, maybe both, but it had to be done. Emily had taken everything from me, my trust, my peace, my family. Now, I was going to leave her with the truth and the wreckage of the life she had tried so hard to control. I folded the letter carefully, sealed it, and placed it on the kitchen counter. It felt like the last piece of a long, painful puzzle. But this was it. There was no going back after today. No turning around. I looked around one last time. The remnants of my old life, the photographs of Tyler, the wedding rings, the memories, were scattered in the corners of the room. Everything was tainted now, and there was no fixing it. I grabbed a bag, stuffing the few things I could carry, some clothes, a couple of personal items, but nothing that would weigh me down. My wedding ring went in my pocket, the last link to the man I once was. I took one more look at the walls, the furniture, the life I had built. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. Not after everything. I drove through the familiar streets, but I didn't look back. I didn't want to see the places that once held meaning. My home, our favorite cafe, the park where I had spent so many afternoons with Tyler. All of it was gone, just like the man I used to be. The drive to the cemetery was quiet. I didn't feel sadness or rage anymore. I just felt empty. And strangely, in that emptiness, I found something I hadn't expected. A kind of peace. At the cemetery, I parked the car and stepped out into the cold air. The ground was damp, the gravestones standing silent, watching. I walked toward the grave of my old self, the person I used to be, the man who loved without hesitation, the man who believed in the family he had built. I dropped the letter into the hole, followed by the wedding ring, Tyler's cards, and the few scraps of my past. They all went into the earth, buried with the man I had been, as if to say goodbye to everything that had tied me to that life. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just watched the dirt settle over everything, and then I turned away. The drive back to the road was just as quiet as the first. No more second-guessing, no more lingering in the past. The man who had lived there was gone, and in his place was someone different, someone stronger, someone free. It felt like a weight lifting off my chest, though I knew the scars would remain. But the freedom. Finally, I had it. I didn't know where I was going, but I didn't care. The only thing that mattered was the road ahead, where I could start fresh. I could build something new, something that was truly mine. The mistakes, the pain, the betrayals, they were all behind me now. I wasn't healed, but I was free, and that was enough. The road stretched ahead, an endless line of pavement disappearing into the horizon. I drove without a destination, my mind numb, but my hands steady on the wheel. It was the kind of journey you take when you leave everything behind, when you make the choice to walk away from the past. Every mile felt like a release. Every minute felt like freedom. I hadn't stopped at a motel in weeks. I didn't stay anywhere long enough to call it home. I was a man with no ties, no family, and for the first time in my life, it didn't bother me. I was learning how to breathe without the weight of my old life hanging on me. The pain was still there, but it had become something else, something I could live with. The name I had once used, the life I had built, it was all gone now. I'd changed my identity, gone underground in the ways I needed to. There were no reminders of the past, no photos, no wedding rings, nothing left to keep me tied to the man I had once been. I was starting over, not from scratch, but from the ashes of the man I had destroyed. I passed through small towns, places where no one knew me, where no one could recognize the man I had been. I looked into the faces of strangers, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was looking at a mask. I felt free. The weight of betrayal, of Emily, of my past life, it was a distant memory now. I didn't carry it with me anymore. The freedom felt strange, like a heavy coat I had to learn how to wear. But with every mile, it felt more natural. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I had found something I hadn't even realized I needed, a second chance. Not to be healed, not to fix what had been broken, but to rebuild. One night, I stopped at a roadside diner in a town that barely made it on the map. It was quiet. The kind of place where you could sit for hours and not be noticed. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes, served me coffee without asking any questions. I didn't need to talk to her. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone. I stared at the reflection in the diner's window, the man I had become. He was older than I remembered, his face a little more worn, his eyes a little emptier. But there was something in those eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. Strength. A flicker of the man I had been before Emily's lies and Brandon's betrayal, before the world came crashing down. I wasn't healed, I was broken, but not in the way I had been before. I had been so wrapped up in the pain that I didn't realize I could walk away from it, that I could let go and create something new. Not a perfect version of myself, but someone who could survive, someone who didn't need the past to define who they were. I paid for my meal and got back in the car, driving into the night. It was the only place I could go now, the road, the unknown. I wasn't whole, I wasn't fixed, but I was free, and that was enough.